Is this thing on? If it's too loud, you're too old. Orange and blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason, grinning from ear to ear. Mason, we got a lot to get to when it comes to the Denver Broncos because are they out on Sean Payton? Like, it just seems like that's where all the rumors and the buzz and Colin Cowherd and D-Max writing about it. Like, we got you covered at denversports.com in terms of the latest coaching news for the Denver Broncos. But does the Sean Payton seem to be fading now?
Right now, Cecil, I wonder if they're really that into any of these candidates. I think they like what they see from some of these candidates. I'm just not sure if they love any of them at this point in time. That's fair. And as I'm going to write in a piece later on, denversports.com, if you like but you don't love, maybe you run it back with Jerry Rosberg for a year.
Yeah. And people thought that was crazy to suggest, 48 hours ago or whatever. But it's like, no, it's better to fall in love or be wowed or be swayed or what have you. It's just interesting. These coaching second interviews. You've got a surprise team waiting in the wings, according to Diana Rossini, for Sean Payton. Might be the Cowboys. I mean, that's what everyone's speculating on.
Although she did say she referred to getting ducks in a row, which made me think, are the Chargers having second thoughts about Brandon Staley because their quarterback's an Oregon Duck?
Right. Get ducks in a row. Where's Dan Fouts at? But like for me, and what is it? Who'd DeMeco Ryan say no to? Carolina? He couldn't schedule a time with them, or they couldn't schedule a time with him? Like, seriously, yeah. Carolina?
And one of the reasons why the Vegas odds changed on DeMeco Ryans regarding the Broncos is that he pulled out of Carolina and I believe Indianapolis as well, right? Because Indianapolis had him on their list. And he's actually, DeMeco Ryans, along with Ejiro Evero, is on everybody's list to talk to. He went 5 for 5 for the teams interviewing potential head coaches for jobs. But when he pulled out from a couple of teams, but was still in on Houston, still in on Denver, that's when the Broncos' eyes shot up. And it sounds, and there are indications that maybe DeMeco Ryans did interview well with the Broncos, did make an impression. The question that is worth asking on DeMeco Ryans' candidacy is this: what is he doing on the offensive side? And that's why earlier today, I just tossed out the brainwave that I had of DeMeco Ryans' head coach, Jim Caldwell, assistant head coach offense. There's not a connection between the two, but I would be concerned if DeMeco Ryans' plan for the offense involved a first-time play caller. Right. That is something that I think, after last year's experience, I don't think the Broncos would sign on for that, a staff that was mostly young. So that's why I kind of had a little, thought and put that into the Twitter ether, as it were, because that's the sort of thing that could get me on board with DeMeco Ryans, is having someone not only experienced running the offense, but accomplished.
Yes.
Like Jim Caldwell is.
Very accomplished. Tom asked here in the chat room, could DeMeco bring in Mike LaFleur? Only the Rams have interviewed Mike LaFleur.
And I'm honestly, after watching the Jets the last couple of years, yes, Zach Wilson didn't give him a lot to work with, but I'm not sure about Matt LaFleur as a play caller right now. I think I'd pass on that one. I'd hope for someone better.
Yeah, certainly he's not the hot name, but for me, if they're not going to fall in love with anybody, Mace, it makes me go, what's going to work? Mm-hmm. Jim Caldwell will work as head coach or OC. I don't know if he'd be OC, but if you could convince him that assistant head coach, yeah, Jim Caldwell will work. And I think DeMeco Ryans would work as well. So I don't necessarily mind if they fall head over heels. Jose in the chat room, one of our best chatters, he's like, they've been screwed by falling in love before. Like, yeah, you can get your heart, get those big eyes, right? Cupid's arrow, what have you. Like, all right. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing because it's business, baby. And I want the guy that works best. And honestly, Jim Caldwell, that'll work.
He will work. Sorry, I'm just tweeting out the link here to the show. That's why I was hoping you'd go a little bit longer there.
Extend, stretch it out.
Yeah, because unfortunately, I can't tweet out the direct link to the video,
or else people will jump in the show.
Well, no, I can't do it. Yeah, exactly. I can't do it until it's live, and that's why you always see me at the start of the show, kind of, do this. I have to do. I don't have.
Doing it live.
Yeah, that's part of the. That's a little flaw that we have in the system here that we really can't do all that much about. But I mean, this is it. Falling in love has been tricky, and that's why. And one thing I think we can probably say here is we're trying to kind of piece things together is that I think the Broncos really like some of these candidates, but I think you're talking about a but with a lot of them. I mean, let's take Jim Caldwell, for example. He's accomplished, took the Colts to a Super Bowl, left Detroit with a winning record, the only full-time head coach in the last half century to do that. Yeah, but he's in his late 60s, right? So are you concerned about the age? He had some health issues about 3.5 years ago. Are you concerned about those popping up? DeMeco Ryans, clearly accomplished on the defensive side of the ball, excellent at running that side, leadership capabilities that are top shelf. Yeah, but what is he putting together on the offensive side? Is he looking to have a play caller perhaps making a level jump? I mean, I'll give you a name. Brian Griese, former Broncos quarterback, has done a great job working with Brock Purdy, but how would you feel if DeMeco Ryans were saying, my offensive coordinator play caller is going to be Brian Griese? I think, honestly, I'd be a little nervous about that.
You should be timid, yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry. I think we had a staff this past year that had a bunch of coaches making level jumps. And I think if that's the sort of staff that DeMeco Ryans is saying, okay, this is my plan. I'm going to have Brian Griese come from the 49ers because, I know him well. I would be leery of that just after the experience that you just endured with a bunch of coaches that were moving up. David Shaw, excellent job at Stanford for most of the time. Yeah, but he hasn't been an NFL head coach. And also Stanford struggled the last few years, although I would argue the struggles at Stanford are due to things unique to the current college football landscape that do not exist in the NFL.
Right.
The NIL, transfer portal. It's not that sort of Wild West in the NFL right now. And so I think he would do very well. Ejiro Evero did a very good job with the Broncos defense last year. Yeah, but he was part of a staff that went 5-12 and also maybe too close to Nathaniel Hackett, who clearly was the one that ownership felt we have to get out of the building right away. And you saw in the last couple of weeks that getting Nathaniel Hackett out of there did result in some better results.
Better results is what this Broncos team needs. By the way, Brian Griese may go to Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. So, that's the latest spin or buzz.
I mean, that would be wild. I'll say this. I don't think Brian Griese is the 49ers quarterback coach next year. That I think we feel pretty secure in saying that. He's going to have a job that is more prominent. It's just a question of what. Michigan's very interesting because the pull of the alma mater, as we saw from Jim Harbaugh, it's very strong.
It's like a tractor beam.
And that may actually be a better move up for Brian Griese to call plays with a potential first-round quarterback in J.J. McCarthy, and then have that kind of be the bridge to where he wants to go next. Because remember with Brian Griese, this isn't just his first year as a 49ers quarterback coach. This is his first year in coaching, period. So, again, if DeMeco Ryans said, I want Brian Griese to be my play caller, I would view that askance. I mean, but yeah, you just go down all these coaches, and there's a yeah, but on all of them. There's a yeah, but on Sean Payton, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but Bounty Gate. Yeah, but at one point, 3 straight losing seasons, 7-9. Yeah, but
And that was with Drew Brees, by the way.
right. Yeah, but no coach has ever won a Super Bowl in their next stop after winning a Super Bowl as head coach in the previous job. And in fact, across the board, those coaches, their winning percentages dropped by about 15 percentage points from, I believe, 630 to 480, if I'm not mistaken, because I went through it last night. So, yeah, and that's sort of where things are right now. And it is Greg Penner's first coaching search. And at some point, you may have to get past the buts and say, okay, who is the best candidate, knowing that there is not a perfect candidate.
Yeah, there was buts with Jim Harbaugh, and the buts with Sean Payton are like, why only one Super Bowl? You got Drew Brees. Yeah, you got an offense. He's throwing for 5. He's falling asleep throwing for 5,000 yards, which used to never happen. And like, Sean Payton was there with Drew Brees throwing for 5,000 yards all day, one Super Bowl. What?
I remember it was the last game of the 08 season. I was actually there because I was working with the Panthers at the time. It was Panthers Saints, and the Saints finished off at 8-8 season, and they were behind late. It was a close game, but it's like, Drew Brees is going for the yardage record, right? I mean, Brees put up some phenomenal numbers, although it's worth noting that on a per attempt basis, he was as efficient for a lot of his years in New Orleans. He was equally as efficient in his last 2 years in San Diego, working with Marty Schottenheimer and Brian Schottenheimer. Just saying.
Yep. I do want to remind people how Jameis Winston looked before he got hurt with Sean Payton. He looked pretty good.
Yeah.
He looked pretty efficient. He went from 30 for 30 to like, oh, Sean Payton's got something, to hurt, and then Sean Payton left.
Could Russell Wilson throw a lot of those passes, though? Because
no.
This is the thing. We come back to the issue of trying to make Russell Wilson into something he's not, something that I think Russell Wilson wants to become, but maybe doesn't have the tools in his drawer to get there. And so the other thing, and this is the other thing, if you bring in Sean Payton, this is part of the but's the draft capital you give up. You give up a first round pick plus at least one other pick, maybe 2 other picks, depending on what kind of package is put together. And you start sacrificing 2024 draft capital. I mean, it better not be put it this way, it better not be a first round pick you're sacrificing in 24, because that first round pick in 24, if Russell Wilson doesn't put together in 23, the round 1 pick in 24 is your potential escape. That's your escape. That is your contingency plan. That is your escape route. And you may need to add something to it as well to get in a position where you could take the most viable escape route to start over again, their names being Caleb Williams and Drake May. And you're probably going to have to pick no later than 3 to get either one of those, depending on how the draft ends up.
Or you're going to have to get up there.
Maybe you have to get to 2. Maybe you have to get up to 2, and you're going to have to trade up, which means you're going to sacrifice more draft capital, and you may have just destroyed your draft capital by trading for Sean Payton. And that's why, like, when I look at the big picture of where the Broncos stand, I'm not sure that Sean Payton works out. And, oh, by the way, this is a guy who on January 8th on Fox, on their pregame show, said 7 out of 10 that he was going to come back to Fox for the 2023 season.
And now Jeff Duncan from the New Orleans Times-Picayune, I believe Jeff works there now.
It's actually they got bought out.
Somebody else now?
No, the Times-Picayune got bought out. I think they go by the New Orleans Advocate now, even though the Times-Picayune still exists as a heritage legacy name.
I love a lot of our newspaper buddies. I feel very bad for our newspaper buddies. But either way, when Jeff Duncan, who's like the king of the Saints, he's Mike Kliss of the Saints, right?
Yeah.
When he's saying like he's going to go back to Fox, I think we should listen to that.
Yeah, I mean that people wanted to dismiss the whole thing of what Jeff Duncan wrote last week about 2 first-round picks that Mickey Loomis is going to want. You know where Jeff Duncan probably got that information from? Mickey Loomis. Off record. I mean, obviously off record, but that's probably where he got that from. So, Duncan's one of those reporters where if he puts it out there, I take it seriously.
Exactly. And you have to know that's why when there's reports like the Broncos or the Saints may want the mid-round they want 2 first-rounders because that's basically, and they can want it. Doesn't mean they're going to get it. So whenever you hear something, it's advice for everyone out there. Know who it came from, and then know who they're likely talking to.
Right.
Put the math together.
And the other thing to know about New Orleans specifically is they've got another coaching cycle of Sean Payton under their control and having his rights. Mm-hmm. They don't have to take a deal they don't like today.
Nope.
They can, and even Sean Payton knows this, and he could look at this, and the Saints could look at this, and Loomis and Payton do talk. They are in communication with each other. They did not part on bad terms. But Loomis is clear that he's going to make a deal that helps the New Orleans Saints, and that the Saints' needs are priority in this. And oh, by the way, what do the Saints need more than anything this year? They need a first-round pick because they traded it, which was dumb last year because they didn't have a good grasp on the reality of what their situation was and what their outlook was. So they trade their first-round pick, which I'm sure they wish they could have back today. But now, but now that they'd love to have it back right now. But that being said, if they can get a better deal a year from now, they're going to take it. They're going to be patient here.
So, they have all the time in the world.
Yes.
So they need a first-round pick and they need money because they're in salary cap hell.
Well, that's the thing. It's in a cash issue. Someone about a week and a half ago suggested to me, well, what about, you just write a check to Gail Benson and say, this will cover the cost of Sean Payton. Or the Saints don't have a cash flow problem at all. All right. It's not, they don't have Walmart money, but they're doing just fine. They don't need the cash. They need cap space. The truth is, Cecil, what that organization needs to do is take this year and say, we are going to reset. Like, just take the pill this year. That would be the smart thing to do, because then that might give them that top 2 pick that would give them the quarterback of the future in 2024. And the funny part of it is, Cecil, if they did that, there's a greater than 0 chance, maybe not a huge chance, but greater than 0, that Sean Payton could walk back through that door.
Exactly. It might entice him to walk through that
yes.
back through that door, back through the back door, back to the back. Anyway, there's doors and there's Payton, and he might be returning.
Just walk in and say, I'm here to fix it.
Hey, I caused the problem, but now I'm back.
Yeah, I caused them, and now I'm back.
RJ has a great question, because I go Elmer Fudd. It is rabbit season. It is the year of the rabbit, right? And Chinese New Year was on Sunday, I believe. Yeah, but anyway, are the Broncos not able to close the deal? I think it's going to be like fantasy football. And not because I'm a fantasy football guy, Mace. But one, they can close any deal. So that's not the issue. But what I think is going to happen, as soon as the first team makes that decision, I think you're going to see a rapid succession of dominoes, as long as the coach is available. DeMeco Ryans, 49ers, whatever. But like, as soon as that first domino falls, as soon as that dam breaks, I think it's going to be bam, 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 news. Like, within a 48-hour period, we could go from 0 head coaches to everybody's hired.
Yeah.
So, like, I think there's a little patience here. It's a very weird coaching cycle because they're all being rational. Mm-hmm. And that's weird in the NFL.
Well, what that shows is that some of the sentiments that were made clear to league owners by Roger Goodell late in the fall, when he reportedly talked about all the money that had been spent on coaches who were fired.
Yes.
What it shows me is that teams took that seriously. Now, look, the Broncos still ate a lot of money on Nathaniel Hackett's contract, right? I mean, they went ahead and did that. But the Broncos also sit at the intersection of taking Goodell's advice in terms of being prudent into account, but also this being the first search. Mm-hmm. And the first search for this ownership group. And so, frankly, going through the process, they're learning what they like. And they learn, and they also learned this past season, I think, some of what they didn't like, right? And that's something that's going into the analysis as well. Now, the thing is, you can't let it become paralysis by analysis. That's where you kind of got to walk the thin line. You're going to have to decide at some point, but I can see why you're putting everybody through this close scrutiny here, and maybe why you're saying, okay, these are the yeah buts, but what are the yeah buts that you can live with? I would say, for example, the yeah buts on Sean Payton. When we're talking about draft capital sacrifice, I'm not sure that you can live with that.
The Jim Caldwell ones are easy to. He's 65 or whatever. Like, I don't care.
The Dan Quinn,
yeah, butts are easy.
I can work past that in the snap of two fingers, right? Because the butts, some of them revolve around just maybe does his leadership style fit what we're going for? Because I mean, he's a clear leader and he's a culture builder, but he's definitely more of that empathetic arm around the shoulder.
Right. What do we want to be?
Right. I mean, he gets results, but you don't look at a Dan Quinn team and say he's a disciplinarian, right? He tends to be a little more laissez-faire. Now, that can get results, but it also can be taken advantage of if you don't have the right players. I mean, and that's the key. You have to have the right players and the right culture, because we go way back to the Raiders of the 70s. John Madden ran a pretty laissez-faire ship, right?
Right.
He got results.
With a bunch of like borderline felons. Like, we have to remember those Raiders teams. They were bad dudes. They were like rebels, ruffians.
They were dangerous people.
Yes.
And John Madden had 3 rules. You know what those 3 rules were?
3 rules. What were they?
Be on time, pay attention, play like hell when I tell you to.
It's pretty
be
good
on
rules.
time. By the way, be on time. That is something that, from my perspective here, covering a team where everything seemed to be late this year, everything seemed chaotic.
Broncos don't like when you say that.
Of course not. Of course not. I know they don't.
They'll be all right.
But you know what? And I'll go back to Vic Fangio. And I know some people don't want me quoting Vic Fangio because his name is mud around here. Vic Fangio is a heck of a coach. All right. He's seen a lot. He's experienced a lot. Just because he didn't work out as a head coach doesn't mean he's not a very good ball coach. And the thing about Vic, when he talked about death by inches, he was referring to things like that. Guys a minute late, but you don't do anything. Then it's 3 minutes late for the next meeting, and then 5 minutes late. And then that inch becomes a bunch of inches and then becomes yards and miles. That's what he's talking about with death by inches. And I think one of the things that happened is with the Broncos this past year, some of those little things they let slide. And so that's where I think, because Dan Quinn is not the ass-kicking disciplinarian, perhaps, that others were, that's maybe is the but on him. But that's where you say, okay, who's he going to surround himself with? I'm going to ask you this, though, Cecil. What kind of conversation would we be having if Jim Caldwell had agreed to an in-person interview and was all in? Do you think he'd be the head coach right now?
Caldwell would be the head coach, or he'd be the front runner?
Harbaugh.
Oh, Harbaugh.
Sorry. Did I say Caldwell? I apologize. I meant Harbaugh.
No. Harbaugh, yes. The same thing, though. Like, okay, now we're front runner. Now we're right there. Number one.
I think if Jim Harbaugh had kind of gone all in and said, we're doing this in person instead of virtually, I think he'd be the head coach right now.
Well, Caleb brings up a great point, because we talk about that first domino falling. What team do you suspect it will be? Perhaps this is my orange and blue glasses, Mace, but it's Denver. Because if I'm the Walmart group, I just say, don't sign anything until you talk to us. Mm-hmm. They can lead the charge on everybody that's up for a head coach, unless it's somebody that they don't want. So they can be like, well, what'd Carolina give you? Oh, we got, 10 million more, whatever.
If it's about cash, yes. The problem is the Broncos don't have as good a situation surrounding them. There is a quicker path to success in Charlotte than there is in Denver. Okay.
Even with no quarterback?
Yeah, because look around. That team came within, look, they had
your division. I'll give them that.
Yeah. They had a week 17 game in Tampa Bay. And if they win, they're a win away. They have control of their fate in week 18 to win the NFC South. And the NFC as a whole, It's in flux. You look around the AFC. In the AFC West, you've got obviously Mahomes and Herbert, but you take a step back around the conference. Joe Burrow, Josh
A team like
Allen,
Buffalo can't
Trevor
make it.
Lawrence. Yes.
A team like Buffalo can't make it.
Buffalo would be the best team in the NFC.
Oh, by far. They'd be in the Super Bowl every year.
With all respect to Philadelphia, with all respect to San Francisco, Buffalo would be the best team. And the Jacksonville Jaguars right now, I'm not sure they wouldn't go in and win the NFC. They actually had Philadelphia on the ropes back in early October when the Jaguars didn't know what they were doing. They were still learning and growing. Now we saw by the end of the season kind of where they were. This in the NFC, if you go to Carolina, you make a couple of tweaks and you're like, I can have this team in 11 or 12 wins next year, especially with Tom Brady almost certainly head out the door. And oh, by the way, probably head to the AFC and perhaps to the Las Vegas Raiders, right? So you put another log on this AFC conflagration that is burning of quarterbacks. And this is what you have to deal with in the AFC. The path is so much wider and offers margin for error in the NFC that doesn't exist in the AFC. And that's why the Broncos can throw all the cash in the world. But does Dan Quinn, apparently reportedly having a second interview with the Arizona Cardinals, right? Does Dan Quinn look at the Cardinals, look around the NFC West? The 49ers are doing well, but they seem to kind of be 1 year on, 1 year off. They squeaked into the playoffs last year. The Rams look like they're potentially head into a rebuild. They're going to try to wring one more year out of it. I think Arizona, if you can get Kyler Murray right, you're in a very good situation. So Dan Quinn may look at the Cardinals and say that's a better job. That's a better path to success than Denver has. Carolina, even though they don't have a quarterback, they do have a top 10 pick right now, right? So you've got a path to get that quarterback in this year's draft, whether by standing pat or by moving up and putting yourself into the Stroud Young sweepstakes. So this is something that it's not as simple as, Walmart billions can write a check here. There are things that are not in the Broncos' favor in terms of competing for head coaching talent.
I will say you have to deal with Kyler Murray in Arizona, and you have to deal with Kyler Murray's dad. Kyler Murray's dad has been far too involved and a pain in the ass. Ask Steve Keim. Ask anybody behind the scenes in Arizona. You've got a helicopter parent of an NFL player. So, hopefully everyone has all the information they need. I'm sure Dan Quinn does. Yeah. And I hope Dan Quinn picks Denver.
Dan, and I agree. I think there was a comment a few minutes ago that said that the buts on Dan Quinn were the flimsiest.
That was Jose, yeah.
That was Jose. I completely agree with that. I think that the buts are flimsy and you can work around them. And oh, by the way, you're talking about Dan Quinn bringing in a coach on the offensive side who likely has experience with Russell Wilson, knows how to maximize that. So,
and Swink McLeod, I love that name.
That's great. That's an all-time handle. Asks, what if Payton, Ryans, or Quinn don't want the Broncos job? What are the Broncos doing? Ooh. Jer Bear, baby.
Jer Bear Caldwell. Jer Bear Caldwell. Caldwell Jer Bear?
Yeah, I'm saying it probably might be Jerry Rosberg for a year, and you kind of figure things out. This is dating me here. This winter of 1991, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were taking some big swings. That was like their first quiet swing at Bill Parcells. They took another big swing a few months later. They put out some feelers to Bill Walsh. I mean, they were looking at some big names. They were looking at some big names to try to transform things. And then they end up hiring the interim head coach under whom they went 1-2 at the end of the season, Richard Williamson. And it became just such a weird year because he was out of his depth. They went 3-13. They fired him after that. I don't think Jerry Rosberg would be like that. I think Rosberg would do better than Richard Williamson back in the day. And Williamson, just because he wasn't a good head coach didn't mean he wasn't a great coach, because he went back to doing what he did best, which was being a receivers coach, and he worked for NFL teams for the next, I think, 19 years. So including coaching up a guy named Steve Smith in Carolina for the first 9 years of his career before Williamson retired. So just wasn't ready for the big share. But there were different things going on. Whereas in Tampa Bay, they had a disciplinarian coach in Ray Perkins, and they needed somebody who could kind of pull off the throttle a little bit. And Williamson did that pretty well, and players liked him. The Broncos needed a guy to come in and restore order after Hackett was fired, and Rosberg did that. I think he would translate a bit better if you didn't get one of these coaches that you want. And I know people are going to say, oh, crazy, it's crazy. I'm not saying this is the first option. I'm saying this actually might not be the worst option than signing on for a 4 or 5 year contract with a coach that maybe you're not all in with. Basically viewing Rosberg as kind of a short-term solution here. And then what happens this year, come what may, if it doesn't work out, oh, you're probably sitting there with a top 10, maybe a top 5 pick, and then you make a trade up and boom, you're talking about Caleb Williams or Drake May. And then you've really got kind of and then you would really have true alignment in terms of the coach, probably the GM, etc. So
I could make the argument that Jerry Rosberg might be the best remaining if you don't get a Quinn, and Payton's gone to me.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that, Mace, is because in football and in life, I think all of us need to take inventory of who we are, where we're at. And the Broncos have some hubris as an organization. They do. And where are the cat's pajamas and cat's meow? I always get confused about that. Like
they've always had hubris.
Yes. And that used to be something you could back up. Now it's like, if they hire Rosberg, it's not because like we suck, but it's just like, we need this. We need who Rosberg is.
Need an adult.
We want to get back to the top of the mountain. We're not there. Rosberg can take us that next step. And then we find the guy after that.
Right. Stop the bleeding and and I would say he did a good job stopping a lot of the bleeding late, but focus on that. Maybe stop the bleeding a bit more in the off season, and then I'm not saying get it all the way back, but get the ball nudged in the right direction. And actually, and who knows, look, after what we saw in week 17, 18, I do want to caution, don't make too much of end of season games, but you did play 2 teams that were playoff teams. The Chiefs were playing for something.
They should have blown you out of the water.
Yeah. The Chargers should have mailed in that game, but didn't. When the Chargers pulled their starters, you were up 31-20. You played a legitimately good game that day. I think you saw enough to say this is what he could do with a completely banged up team. I would be curious to see what ideas he had in terms of a staff, because you know something, the buttons he pushed staff-wise in those last 2 weeks were spot on. And oh, by the way, to kind of tell you a little bit about how Jerry Rosberg feels about Justin Alton, where is Justin Alton interviewing this week? Baltimore. With John Harbaugh, Jerry Rosberg's coach, close friend.
His boo.
Right. That should tell you what kind of belief Rosberg has in Justin Alton, and also that, and the fact that he's on the Ravens roster or radar right now for what could be a massive year for Lamar Jackson. That says a great deal too, as well. And oh, by the way, another job for which Justin Alton interviewed was under Sean McVay. Okay, you got John Harbaugh and Sean McVay, and they want to talk to Justin Alton. And a lot of that is because of what Jerry Rosberg did in saying, I want that guy to be my play caller. I want to see what he can do.
Meanwhile, the Jets talked to the guys that were awful calling plays with Denver.
There's, as an old friend used to tell me, that's why some teams win and some teams lose. That's why some organizations win and some organizations lose. Right?
And you always win when you watch Orange and Blue today. He is Andrew Mason. I was waiting for that, Mace. I am Cecil Lammey. Follow him on Twitter at Mace Denver. Don't follow me at Cecil Lammey. And make sure to be safe, be kind, know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned. And as always, Broncos country, stay frosty.